Gameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Bring you our Pac-12 Game of the Week preview between the Arizona State Sun Devils and the Stanford Cardinal. Now let's take a look at some keys to victory for both teams, starting with the Sun Devils.
The Sun Devils eked out a victory last week versus Wisconsin, and this is another huge test for that run defense. They're going to have to be able to stop the run versus Stanford, and the real key, in my opinion, is being able to make Kevin Hogan beat you consistently. Maximum effort is needed defensively in order for these guys to have some success. Now, offensively, as explosive as the Sun Devils are, they must work the receivers in the passing game more. If they can get those guys out there on the flanks involved, it's going to expand that offense and give Stanford that much more to worry about this week. Now let's move over to the Cardinal in this ball game, and Stanford plays a brand of football that no one wants to face. They line up, run downhill, and test your physicality on defense. Now versus Arizona State, they must physically wear these guys down. They're fast, they're athletic. You have to wear these guys down in order to have some success. Now on defense, the linebackers will have to make sure they protect the perimeter, don't allow Arizona State to get outside, and force these guys to play a downhill game. You want to zone blitz Taylor Kelly to create some opportunities for your defense. Confuse him pre-snap, and that way you can take chances on the back end and come up with some interceptions. The X factor for the Sun Devils will be their linebacking core. They're going to have to take on blocks from the guards. They're going to have to take on blocks from tight ends. They're going to have to be physical at the point of attack in order to put Stanford in second and long and third and long situations. The X factor for the Cardinal will be their passing game. Can they come into this ball game and break tendencies just a little bit to back those guys up out of that box so that way they can get back to their bread and butter, which is running the football? So they're going to need Kevin Hogan to make plays early in the passing game in order to be successful. Now here are some coaching points for both teams in this ball game. For Arizona State, you want to control the pace of the game. Now whether or not you want to speed it up or slow it down, that's up to you, but you can't allow Stanford to come in and run the football and dictate what you do defensively and also dictate what you do offensively. Now the matchup I think Arizona State can exploit is with their running backs versus the linebackers of Stanford in a passing game. Keep an eye on Marion Grace. He's going to be a huge factor in this matchup. Now you want to dedicate to the running game. Again, you have talented backs that can also catch the football out of the backfield, but you want to dedicate to the running game and make sure Stanford will respect the run so that way your play action pass game can definitely be effective. For the Cardinal, you want to protect the perimeter. Like I've said before, Arizona State has a lot of speed and athleticism. Don't allow these guys to get outside. And you also want to play Stanford football. Keep everything tackle to tackle, line up with double tight end sets, run downhill on defense, stay aggressive with those linebackers, force these guys into obvious passing situations because you do have excellent corners out there on the flanks. Now, one matchup that has to be won by Stanford is by their wide receiver, Ty Montgomery, who had an outstanding game last week versus Army. He's going up against Lloyd Carrington. That's the top cornerback for Arizona State. Montgomery has to win that battle down in, down out in order for the Cardinals to get that passing game going. Now here are some 2014 draft prospects you want to keep an eye on in this ball game. For Arizona State, Marion Grace, like I said before, a guy that could easily be one of the top receivers in the country. He's an outstanding running back with a lot of elusiveness. Defensive tackle Will Sutton, despite his size, is a constant nuisance in opposing backfields. And linebacker Carl Bradford is a guy that can definitely bring pressure coming off the edge. When we look at Stanford in this ball game, their linebacking core is outstanding, probably the best in the country. Trent Murphy is the leader of this pack, 6'6", 261 pounds, outstanding range from a guy coming off the edge. And also Shane Scobb, a guy that can drop back in coverage and also play downhill. I love what I see out of David Yankee, guard, 6'5", 311, probably the best guard in the country. And tackle Cameron Fleming, keeping a long tradition of solid Stanford offensive linemen. Cornerback Mike Haynes was a tremendous athlete that could have been an outstanding offensive player had he chosen that side of the ball at Arizona State, but he was a three-time All-WAC performer, two-time consensus All-American, and at 6'2", 192 pounds, matched up very well versus opponents' number one wide receiver, and in 1974 led the nation in interceptions. One of the greatest football coaches of all time was Glenn Pop Warner, coached Stanford football team from 1924 to 1932, where he racked up a 71, 17, and 8 record, 2 bowl appearances, and won a national championship with Stanford in 1926. I like Arizona State in the upset in this ball game. A lot of times in a power versus speed matchup, you want to go with power, but in this case, I do believe speed can disrupt power. I think they're going to do a great job this week versus the run. One thing that we haven't seen this year from Arizona State, and on offense, they'll spread the field and expand Stanford's coverage and force those guys to make plays one-on-one, and they don't have the athletes that can compete with Arizona State.